Welcome to the family, son.
Hello, my name is Tesh, and today I want to talk about something that has taken over the internet recently and been on a lot of people's minds, mine included, that being Resident Evil. Resident Evil Requiem came out recently and has been hugely successful, both commercially and critically. And in the months leading up to that and the anticipation, I've been playing a lot of what was the entry point into the series for me, and really my entry point into horror video games in general, that being Resident Evil 7. Over the past couple of months, I've been slowly working my way through 100%ing the game or getting all of the Steam achievements, and it's been a lot of fun, and I've spent a lot more time with this game than I have ever before in the past. And through all of that time and all of that experience playing it, it's really solidified for me that Resident Evil 7 is nothing short of a masterpiece, and maybe even one of the best pieces of horror media ever made. I think why it nails the horror genre so well really comes down to three main ingredients, three main boxes that it needs to check. The first one, and sort of the most obvious for horror, is that it needs to be scary, and Resident Evil 7 is very, very scary. Another area this game nails really well, and something that isn't necessarily talked about as much in horror, but I think is kind of a big part of it, would be disgust, or just grossness in general. And then the third thing is something that doesn't have to be there in horror media, but I think when it is used well, it is incredibly effective and adds a lot to it. That being sort of a sadness or a tragedy that underpins it. Resident Evil 7 really nails all three of these elements so well and is a big reason for why I think it's a masterpiece. And today I just kind of want to break down some of the elements of this game and how they contribute to these three categories specifically and why it makes it so good. Something that contributes greatly to both the scariness and the grossness of this game is its atmosphere, and that's really probably the strongest aspect of this game, I would say. As far as atmosphere goes, we're talking about things like the lighting, we're talking about the set decorations, the things that are in the world that you'll find around in the Baker residence. And then also the music, which is used pretty sparingly, but when it is, I think it's incredibly effective. On the lighting specifically, lighting isn't something that I generally think about a lot in video games. I think it's probably, an important aspect of game design, but when it's done well, it's something that you usually don't think about. Like when I'm running around, getting destroyed by millennia over and over in Elden Ring, or when I'm playing Yakuza or something, I'm not really thinking a lot about the lighting. But in Resident Evil 7, it's such an integral part of the game. This game plays a lot with, how many lighting sources they want to put in an individual area, and the contrast between the dark areas and the light areas are, huge. There'll be just a lamp over here, or just a light shining through a window over there, and then in between it's just a black void. When I was playing this game, I thought that something may have been wrong or I may have turned the brightness setting too low. And I went into the settings and cranked it and then realized that it just made everything gray and washed out, which cements the fact that it was supposed to look like this and there's supposed to be, areas that are really difficult to see into. Obscuring parts of the environment add to the scariness of it because you don't know what could be lurking in the shadows or what might be hiding around any given corner. As far as the set decorations go, it's something that if you don't slow down and take in all of the scenery, you might miss. But when you do, I think it really enhances the experience a lot. I mean, just seeing all of the gross little details and little things they have lying around. There's one area in the game where you open a drawer and there's just a gross set of false teeth that you can pick up and inspect. They don't have any purpose other than just to add something weird and gross to find in the environment. Or later on in the guest house area of the game, slowing down and looking at some of the paintings on the wall and just seeing the very strange and eerie things that they depict just adds to that atmosphere. And then also just seeing the regular stuff that's around the house, like an old football helmet or old family pictures or something, and contrasting that with how you see the family depicted in the game really makes you think and wonder what's really going on here and why are these people acting the way that they are. A big element of what makes this game so scary, and something that's kind of obvious for horror, is jump scares. Jump scares are something that can be done really well or really poorly. It's really easy to do a cheap jump scare that doesn't feel earned and just kind of you just have something jump out from where it's not expected and play a loud noise and you'll get the audience to jump, but it's really difficult to make it feel earned and deserved, and somehow Resident Evil 7 does that every single time. Like I said, I've been playing this game a lot recently. I think I've played through it probably 4 or 5 times now. And even coming up on some of the jump scares that I know are going to happen, they'll still make me jump a little bit just because of how effective they are and how well done they are. There's this one part, I think my favorite jump scare in the entire game, when you're going up this little staircase to unlock a door, and Marguerite jumps out of the side of the camera and grabs you by your throat and throws you back down the stairs. I mean, every single time I play the game and see that, I know it's coming up again, but I swear I still jump and like let out a little scream every time. I mean, this game is, I can't even tell you how many times almost jumped out of my chair, let out like a little scream. You know, my wife hears me from across the house or whatever, just going, "Whoa," over and over and over. I'm not even sure how or why they do it so well, or, you know, I have a difficult time kind of breaking down and understanding why they work so well, but I just feel it in my bones that they do. And it, you know, with how often they're able to get me even when I know it's coming, you know, it's a marker that this game is doing something well with its jump scares. Another staple of horror video games, and something Resident Evil 7 does well, is disempowerment. There was a trend during the 2010s to like fully disempower your character in games like Amnesia, which Resident Evil 7 does just a little bit at the beginning when you have Jack stalking you around the main house, like you can't kill him. But generally it doesn't do that, and I think it's kind of to its benefit. You kind of feel like you're just barely powerful enough to take down the enemies that are in your path along the game. You know, weapons have low ammo capacities and reload speeds are slow. You only find so much ammo around the world and so many healing items, you know, all staples of the survival horror genre. And it's really perfected in this game, I would say. You do have all of these weapons at your disposal, you know, a grenade launcher, or a flamethrower, shotguns and stuff. And even with all of that, you still feel like you're barely scraping by to survive and kill all of these enemies. And I think that's really a marker of horror games done well. There has to be a certain element of disempowerment, I think. And it's a fine line to ride, you know. In some games, you know, will go one way or the other, but I think there has to be some level of disempowerment, and I think Resident Evil 7 strikes a really good balance there. As far as the disgusting parts of the game, there's quite a few, actually. Something that struck me about RE7 was how much dismemberment there is, or people getting their limbs cut off. Like, a lot. I think like 3 or 4 times within the first hour or so of the game, somebody gets their limb cut off. You know, you get your hand cut off early by Mia. When you're sitting at the dinner table, Lucas's arm gets cut off by Jack. It's an optional encounter, but you can even get your leg cut off by Jack on one of those early stages. And it's like, oh, he just like toys with you in such a gross, like weird way. It kind of gives me it reminds me a little bit of Texas Chainsaw Massacre for some reason, just kind of toying with your victim. He like cuts your leg off and then sets the healing across the room and just watches you crawl across to get it. It's such a just horrific and over the top moment, which, you know, all of these scenes are. And, you know, over the top is something that can be used to describe a lot of aspects of this game. I'm not going to talk about that here more in a second, but the enemy design is also something that's pretty gross. Most of the time you're fighting the molded, and they come in a few different varieties, and they're just kind of this weird, gooey, tarry, sort of fleshy amalgamation. You know, they can be dismembered, you can shoot their heads off or their arms off, and they'll still keep coming at you. And when you do take their limbs off, they have such a gross, like, popping sound and this, like, disgusting, like, blood, pus-filled sort of gore. It's just so disgusting in all the right ways that, you know, add to the horror of the game. I especially think the fat molded that they introduced later on are just really gross. I mean, they're just kind of big, you know, pillowy, I don't know, marshmallow Pillsbury Doughboys or something. But they throw up, they projectile vomit at you from across the room, and this disgusting animation and like the effects of it coming out and splashing on you. It's like some sort of acid or something. That I just loved those enemies. They're so gross and in the perfect way. Something that I found particularly gross because of, you know, my personal fears or phobias, I guess, is Marguerite and the whole guest house section with all of the bugs. They have all of these like weird, almost kind of fleshy nest things that, you know, will have swarms of stinging insects or something come out of them if you come too close. And again, on the sound effects and the, you know, visual effects, they just sound really gross as you're burning them, and they're like popping and just spewing. I don't even know what it is all over the place. Another fun little, like, you know, gross detail, when you get stung by them too much, if you look down at Ethan's hands, he's just like covered in like whelps and bites, which is just such an interesting little, you know, interaction there that I just got a good kick out of. As soon as I started talking about this section, I saw a wasp flying outside my window, so I don't know if that's a bad omen or what's going on over here. But Marguerite's boss fight, I think, is really gross, and like the changes to her character model that go along with it too. She gets this like gross elongated look to her, and then she starts to be able to like give birth to those like nest I talked about a second ago. And like her, character model reflects the anatomical changes that would need to happen for that to be possible. And it just kind of, I don't know, it gives me like a little bit of a shiver thinking about it. It's just really gross, and I'd really like her fight because of that and the whole, her kind of playing this hide and seek game with you. And then when it comes to the sad elements, it really all comes from the story of this game. Resident Evil 7's story isn't so much in your face, but if you look at all of the notes scattered around and you look at some of the environmental storytelling there, it really paints a bigger, more vivid picture of what's going on here, and I think it's a really compelling and interesting story. The Baker family just seems like complete monsters. They're just completely unhinged at the beginning of the game, and makes you wonder what happened to them. And you kind of get to piece together what did happen to them and how they used to be a totally normal family. And like I said, just having family pictures lying around, or just like you can go see Lucas's childhood room, and it's just pretty normal toys lying around there. But obviously something strange has gone down to cause them to act the way they do now. You start to realize they're just innocent bystanders that are caught up in this huge mistake by this shadowy company that's dealing in bioweapons. They save a little girl that they find out in their swamp, and then it infects them with this disgusting mold that causes them to be under her control and be these grotesque monsters now. And even though Evelyn is, she is the villain of the story, you realize that she's really not the one who caused all of this to happen. I mean, she is directly the one who caused all of this to happen, but she's just a bioweapon that was created by some, shady corporation. There's almost sort of like a Frankenstein's monster element to her. She's this creature that was created, against her will. She didn't choose to be born the way that she was, and she has to just find a way to survive in this society that is not ready for her to exist and be who she is. And she just survives any way that she knows how. I think there's a little note like later on in the game talking about how they engineered the desire for her to have a family and this like want to be a part of a family because she's a little girl, and how that's pretty messed up. And that's the whole reason is why she's taking over all of these people, is just to try to make a family for herself, something that she totally lacked, as she's not a real human being. And that just adds a whole nother level of depth to this character that is the main antagonist, more or less. So a couple of other things of note that aren't directly related to the three things I talked about before there that I still wanted to mention because I just find them interesting or funny. Like I said a bit ago, this game is incredibly over the top and like so heightened and taken to so many extremes. This game really is like maybe some of the best schlock I've ever played. And I'm not even using that as like a derogatory term. Like I love schlocky stuff, slasher movies and which whatever. I love schlock, and this game is such a great example of it, really up at the top for me. The boss fights are a big part of this. They're so extreme and so memorable because of it. I mean, that first encounter in the garage with Jack and the car is just some of the craziest shit I've ever played. You get in this car and you're reversing back and forth and trying to slam him into the wall and run him over. Or, if he gets into the car first, he's doing the same thing to you. It is just such a memorable and insane encounter, and just something I've never played a game that, had a scene that was quite like that or made me feel quite the same way that did. And same thing with the chainsaw fight in the basement. I mean, that's just insane. He's got like a weird scissor chainsaw contraption, and you just got a normal chainsaw, but you guys are literally chainsaw dueling to the death in the basement of this house. I don't even know if I can like put into words or articulate why that's so cool or how exactly that makes me feel. But that's just some of the coolest shit I've ever seen in a video game, and again, it's just so memorable because of it. I'm never gonna forget that. Just to touch on Ethan, like as a character, I mean, he doesn't really have a lot of traits, or there's no character development, or I don't really know how he feels about anything going on here. And that's kind of the beauty of it. I mean, he's so nonchalant about just the most insane stuff going on all around him, and I think it's all the better for it. I think it's hilarious. There's one moment in particular that actually comes right after the moment I talked about before, my favorite jump scare, where Marguerite throws you down the stairs, where you fight her off a little bit and she falls and sinks down into a sinkhole under the house. You watch her transform into this gross, elongated, bug-like creature that, matches with the theme of, bugs surrounding Marguerite. And you watch her crawl away into like a crawl space underneath the house on all fours carrying her lantern. And he just says,
"What the fuck? Well, that's special."
And there's a part earlier on where he's basically saying what the player might be thinking, actually. You unlock this shadow puzzle that shows you like a hidden passageway, and he just says,
"Who builds this shit?"
Yeah, Ethan, I'm thinking the exact same thing too. Oh my god, the funniest thing, maybe one of the funniest things in any game I've ever played, actually, is the moment pretty close to the beginning when he's interacting with the cop through the window. And you can tell the cop is kind of wary of him because he kind of sounds like he's crazy just with the stuff he's saying and the situation that he's in. And he's pleading with the cop to give him his gun through the window.
"You gotta give me your gun."
You must have lost your mind.
Who says that? Who thinks that the cop is actually going to do that? It's so funny, dude. I love that moment so much.
"A fucking pocket knife?"
Here, take it.
Resident Evil 7 is an absolute masterpiece. It was a perfect introduction in the Resident Evil series for me, and I think a great starting point for a lot of people too. I really like this new direction that Resident Evil's gone in. I haven't played 6, but I know that, that was a bit of a misstep for the series and almost, killed it, to be honest with you. And it makes sense that Resident Evil 7 was able to revitalize the series and, bring it to heights that it's never reached before. It's more successful than ever before now. And that's really down to Resident Evil 7. They went back to the basics and their horror roots, and they also changed up the series a little bit, making it first person instead. And it really feels like Capcom made all of the right decisions when it comes to Resident Evil 7, and it's led to the series being better than it's ever been before. All right, that's really all I've got to say about Resident Evil 7 for now. They actually made a lot of DLC for it, and I'm debating on whether or not I want to make a separate video talking about just the DLC, because I find it pretty interesting too. So let me know if you might want to see that. Let me know what your favorite Resident Evil game is, because I'm curious. And it's a series that I've played quite a few of them now, but I'm still working my way through the backlog of all of the games they have. All right, if you made it this far, thank you for watching so much, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.